Hey everybody, Bearded Brush. So, random video for my progression of other things. So, to go back to a video a long time ago, like from the very first couple that I did a little Rohan video, and that was basically just of some heroes. And I believe in that video I said that I'll be showing some more updates of my Rohan army as it came along. I never did, basically, and I think it's got to be, Christ, 6 years later. Yeah, this is some of the progression. I have actually got a captain, another group of 6 warriors, a load of Rohan Royal Guard on foot. I'll do them in another video, along with the collections of various hammers, gamlings, Aoins. My mission with the Rohan stuff is I want to collect every single version of the heroes, of the characters, all of that. But there's so many versions, and as we know, there's plenty of scalpers about on eBay selling certain models at ridiculous prices. I did get stung as well with a copyist. That was in regards to an Elrond of Master of Rivendell model, fun enough. But yeah, I bought it from Russia years ago, and the quality of the sculpt was brilliant because he's obviously done a good job of copying it. But unfortunately, it's made from very poor quality metal type materials, and it broke very easily. The certain bits snapped very easily. So I'm quite wary after that of making sure to sort of really research the eBay sellers. I didn't think much at the time because generally I'd had plenty of luck and had honest sellers, but unfortunately I should have realised that when he had multiples of every single model, including rare models, I should have realised that he's probably copying them. But there you go, lesson learned. But yeah, I want the Rohan army. If I go back a bit, so the Rohan army is one of my favourite armies because, as I've mentioned in the past, I love Saxon history, I love Vikings. I'm more of a fan of Saxons than Vikings, really, I suppose, just because the history to me is more, I find a little bit more interesting. But yeah, so for Rohan in the Lord of the Rings, it was always awesome to see them come to the film, and the models are fantastic. Their aesthetics, the way they look, are just fantastic. They're really cool, and the design of like Edoras, Helm's Deep, all those places, all the costumes, the shields, everything, so much detail went into it, so much sort of appreciation of the base history of the culture that was used to inspire Rohan. Yeah, it's fantastic. But the Rohan army itself is an army that I've not really prioritised. I've always meant to. I always go to them once every 6 months, but then I stop and don't get any further. So I'm finally trying to make some dedicated time to work on these guys. And what you see here is my most recent painted up batch of minis. So first up, let's go for these guys. They're not fully finished yet, funnily enough. I've still got to work on their spears. But I've got the Rohan Royal Guard, which are, let me just move my light a little bit. So yeah, you guys know what these look like. They've been around for 20 plus years now. But here's my rendition of them, or depiction of them. Yeah, they're so cool. Got so much detail. Metal models, and I'm always a fan of metal models. Apologies if you can hear Titanic in the background. My little girl's not very well, so she's watching Titanic. She loves it. The school has inspired her. Anyway, back to Middle Earth things. Yeah, the metal models. I'm a huge fan of metal models. I always have been. I love the new plastics, don't get me wrong. I love the plastics, I love the resins. But for me, metal, it's, I suppose, a bit of nostalgia, really, I suppose. Let's just move this and try and get the light a bit better. Oh, there we go. That's better. Yeah, I'd always like the metal models. I sound like a broken record, I'm sure, but it's the fact that these things have been sort of hand sculpted, whereas the more modern metal plastics, I believe it's more computer based. It seems they don't seem to sculpt them as much. Nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. The details, I have to admit, even better, but knowing that someone has actually made these to some extent by hand it's always awesome, and to be honest, a little bit mind-blowing, the detail that goes in, like the shield, it's just fantastic. But anyway, so here's the colours, the usual colours used, as I'm sure you guys know. Yeah, I use a lot of wet blending for the horse highlights, and again, I've tried to give them some detail, but of course, because there's so many horses, I don't want to sort of burn myself out with what's the word? You know, painting the same model over and over and over again, which is obviously a hefty task with Rohan, because of course they're horsemen, and they didn't have a very varied amount of horses for Rohan. You've got one which is like this, obviously bounding forwards, and then you got one which is more upright, and that is it. That's the variety. So I'm going to have to work on maybe doing some conversions. Obviously, because this dude is metal, the horse, although I glued it and gave it lots of time to sort of dry and set, the horse still leant forward somewhat when he was glued on top. So I've used a little bit of actual tree bark, as you can see there's from an actual bit of tree. I've had a massive log, if you want to call it that. Ripped it off, baked it in the oven, this was a couple of years ago now, to get rid of any, insects or any sort of, mould or anything. Got rid of all that, dry brushed it on, and I've used it as a support for the front leg, on the opposing leg. So that way the weight distribution's better, and it doesn't affect the pose of the model. And just gives a bit of character as well, really. I think it's quite nice. But yeah, I've only got 3 of these guys at the moment. I put a lot of effort into them, more so than the other riders, because again, Rohan's not a horde army, is it? But there's lots of them, isn't there? So I'm not going to go mad in the detail on the more standard warriors, but I'll give them a certain amount. But the Rohan Royal Guard, there'll be less of them, I would imagine, in the overall numbers of the army. So yeah, that's why they've got more detail. These guys are a bit more sort of couple of highlights, and that's that. So this horse, I'm really pleased with this horse actually. I'm trying a slightly different approach to highlighting, where I'm going for multiple lines of highlight to almost sort of represent the hairs. What do you think? I'm really pleased with this one. I think it's coming quite nicely. And again, with the actual soldier himself, like for example, I've got some nice highlights on the shield. I want to try and sort of put maybe a wash just to sort of bring out them lines around where the sun crest is. The top half you can see the lines, but the bottom half has got a bit lost in the Ushabti bone highlight, so I'll have to work on that. But that's him. Quickly whiz through these guys. I like to use lots of different colours for the horses. I don't just want like one colour and that's that. But at the same time, like I said before, I'm not going to go mad. I'm doing lots of varied horse colours, lots of different varieties, because it will take forever to paint the army. And obviously, although it's nice and we always love to sort of do as much effort as we can with our models, to spend a load of time on every single model being super detailed, super highlighted, look, it's like a golden demon entry winning piece for each and every model would just be ridiculous. Be lovely to do, but it'd be ridiculous. Now these 5 horsemen, funny enough, they come from a box of models I bought locally. A lady was selling them on behalf of her son, I would imagine. I think he'd probably bought them from when the set was first out, judging by the way the collection of models, all the old models and no new ones. And as you can probably tell, that dude hasn't got a shield. And that's because these are all pre-made, stuck together. They used all sorts of glues, that lots of the bits of plastic hadn't even been trimmed. I think, to be honest, they'd possibly just been twisted off the sprue. There's loads of bits sticking out and everything, so I had to really try and tidy these guys up. I tried to use putty to try and fill in the gaps as best I could. And I've just sort of, not an eBay save, but a second-hand save with these models. But that's why there's one missing, because obviously they come in groups of 6, but there's one missing. I can only assume that the previous owner did something with them. I'm not entirely sure what, but he must have done something. But yeah, I'm going to see if I can try and get a sacrificial free shield and stick it on that dude. Worst comes to worst, I'll just count him as having a shield. I'll cut off the knobbly bit, smooth it down, just paint over it, and then just count him as having a shield, although he hasn't visibly got one. And then after that, we have got Grimbolds. Well, so the theme I'm going for with this army, I probably should have said to begin with, is it's going to be Theodreds army. I can't think what the actual term is for the army itself. From the actual Rohan at Warbook sourcebook. But yeah, I love Theodred's plight. I love the story that goes into him, what happens to him, the despair of his father knowing that his only heir and son has died. I like that. I think it's quite cool. Makes it more realistic. And again, it kind of goes with the Saxon theme a little bit. I mean, we had many powerful Saxon kings and whatnot that, suffered ends, like their royal lines, collapsed. The Woofingers in East Anglia had many issues. They went from a mighty kingdom to one of the weakest kingdoms and were conquered by many different other kingdoms, neighbouring Mercia, all sorts like that, and Northumbria. So that's why I kind of like it, and why I almost sort of relate to it in a local history sense. So the original video, I had already painted Grimbold, I bought him way back when he was originally sold individually for £7.20, I think, or £6.80, something like that. But he's a great model. He looks freaking awesome. He's got a cool Dunlending aesthetic because I believe his bloodline, it does go back to the natives. I think he does have some Dunland blood in him somewhere. And I like how whether they meant to or not, but to me, he has that look a little bit. He's got that sort of Dunlending look, the furry underside of the cloak. He looks a bit more wild. He's got like a plated armour rather than mail. That looks more like plate to me, sort of thing. So he's cool, but you've seen him before in a previous video, I'd imagine. So for that reason, obviously he's an ally with Theodreds Guard. As Theodreds Guard, that's what it's called, I believe. Check for me. Let me know in the comments. But for that, I decided to come up with a slightly different colour scheme because obviously the Grimbold's helmingers, they get a +1 to their strength, which would be very handy for this army. I need to remember actually how many Grimbold can lead, but at the very least he can lead 12. I'm guessing it's more likely 15, but we'll see. But either way, I've painted up a nice group of, hang on, did I paint 12 or was it more? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, so we've got a few to play with, plus Banner Bearer and his musician. But I went for a red and brown scheme to represent the helmingers. And here we go. Here is Grimbold's Banner Bearer. Again, I gave the Banner Bearer and the Hornblower a priority on the detail rather than the normal warriors, again, to make them stand out a bit more. They're going to be in the battlefield for the longest. And again, I'm not sure if I can get the light. It's really bad weather today. It's quite miserable outside, so the lighting isn't perfect. But for what it's, you can sort of see it. The flag, or the banner, I did the same things with the horsehairs on the other models. I did loads and loads and loads of very fine lines. I highlighted lighter and lighter and lighter, went over it and over and over it to try and replicate and give like the look of woven fabrics. And it's there. I quite like it. I think it's come out okay. Again, it's just to give it something a bit more of a pop. He's got ginger beard because all epic warriors have ginger beards, like myself. And yeah, I think it's coming quite nicely. Used a lot of wet blending as well with these guys, with the cloaks, to try and make gradual fade. My earlier Rohan warriors on horse, so I'm very pleased with them, but their highlights are much more obvious. They're a little bit more stark. I hadn't quite mastered wet blending back then. I was saying that I hardly really did it. It's more just normal highlights where I sort of mix the paint colours in a gradual descent or ascent, but yeah, they're a bit more stark. So with these guys, I wanted to make them a bit more blended, a bit more subtle. Give them some blues and browns. This dude's got a nice brown cloak. I didn't want all my Rohan warriors to have green cloaks because they don't all have that in the film, but you see a lot of armies where it's just green, 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 green. I wanted to give them a bit more of a mixture. But it's the Hornblower, lots of character. Again, he's got a bit of a Dunlending look, like that armour. That's not your standard mail, it's more sort of that plated sort of stuff. Or, I can't think what the word is, not lamella. Is it plate armour? It's not plate armour, is it? I can't think what you call it. But anyway, that sort of armour. Then with the warriors, we have got red and brown shields. So again, it's going in with the banner. It's got the look of the banner. So here we go. So nice sort of highlights and things. Got some nice sort of cool colours. Got some nice sort of bits on the bases as well. Got like a moss effect. Bits of like different colour grasses to represent the Rohan grasslands. The bleakness of it as such, and the batten windswept plains of Rohan. So I've tried to incorporate that quite nicely on the bases. But as a whole, I feel these guys have come out really well. I'm not just saying that in like in a sort of smug way, but I'm really genuinely pleased with how well they've come out. I really am. As I was painting them at first, because I have started to do that a little bit more with other armies like Gundabad, but I'm not used to painting with lots of dark browns and things. Historically, a lot of my armies, looking behind me, you've got either well-armoured metallic armies, or you've got lots of colour, like my Arnor, the Dunland army I've got has lots of colour and things, within reason anyway. And having lots of brown is something I'm just not particularly well versed in, so I was a little bit, is this going to work out okay? But no, it has. I'm really pleased. And yeah, red and brown shields is the theme for Grimbold's helmingers. Yeah, really pleased with them. The green is it is the old camo green, I believe. Got some nice highlights on the helmets as well. I always do the beard and the hair last. I'll always do the cloaks first and sort of go from there. Well, armour first, sorry, and then go from there with the cloaks and things. But the beard, the hair is always the last thing, because the sort of the hair colour is what I sort of decide when I look at the actual models themselves. See what character works best with what sort of colour hair and stuff. But yes, camo green is the old camo green as well. Well, obviously it is because it's called camo green, think about it, because it's probably been renamed since. But I had to really struggle to get the last of it out because it's an old paint. It's starting to clag up a bit, and I wanted to get these guys painted up as best I could. In fact, what I'll do, so I'm just going off on the side now, I'm just going to move a couple of these models to the side because they're actually conversion ones. I just want to sort of point out a few actual things. I think that's the only two there. But yeah, then you've got a couple of bone. I won't show you all of them because you've seen these guys for years already, but there you go. But yeah, the camo green, it's a lighter green. It is a lighter green compared to the other ones. But I'm quite pleased with how it come out. I think it's quite nice compared to the other 6. I'll show you another video of the other 6 because it's sort of a similar shade, but I think it's with one of the more modern paints at the time, so the shade is different. But it's nice that we've got these various shades of green. So when the army's all combined, you're going to see different shades of green that all look similar. And I think that's quite realistic in a funny sort of way, without meaning to be, without intending it to be, because obviously these guys are like, they're farmers, they're Middle-earth Saxons, so people made their own fabrics for the reason. They used to go to like individual, like what's the word, like textiles, is that the word, clothes weavers and things. So obviously the way they stained their clothes, the way they stained their materials and their fabrics probably varied from person to person. So for that reason, I'm quite pleased with how the aesthetic is going to come out. In fact, I can show you the difference. Look. So this is Grimbold, and he is painted, his cloak is painted with a different shade of what is meant to be the same green. Highlight is obviously different as well, but see the difference? Look, so this is the recent one with the original paint, which I found, and this is with the newer version of that same paint with a different sort of highlight technique. So you can see the different shades, you can see different colours, but it still works together, which is nice. Also with Grimbold's helmingers, I won't show you all of them, but some of the shields I've made to look battered. I've sort of cut little bits out and stuff. For example, with this one, there's a little nook in it to make it look like these guys are obviously used to fighting. They're used to battling and doing things. And what I did is I converted this dude to be holding a spear in his left hand rather than the shield. And the shield, what I've done is I have put a belt, I've green stuffed a little belt to go round the front to make it look like the shield is strapped to his back. And I'm really pleased with how that came out. Really, really pleased. It took a lot of blood, sweat and tears, especially with the hand, because this hand is green stuffed. But, well, I'm quite pleased with how well that came out, to be honest. It took a lot of effort, because the hand, there is a hand there, sort of green stuffed on top of what was there. But when I took this off, I kind of made a bit of a bodge job, so I took a bit of fixing. And the same with this guy. So originally he is holding the shield in front of himself, which is what similar to this guy anyway, not quite the same. That's because the other model I think is in my cabinet, sorry. But yeah, as you can see, what I've done is I shaved off the shield ball joint as such on his hand, cut it down, and then I sort of engraved some finger lines into there to make the fist. I've then green stuffed the shield onto him to make it look like he's got it strapped to him. And then looks like he's just like, I don't know, going to throw the spear or, some sort of epic stance sort of thing. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with how that's come out. And again, it's just to make it look a bit different, make the warriors look a bit more fighty, because they're the Grimbold's helmingers. So I'd imagine they're a bit more battle weary, a bit more used to fighting and things. So I'm pleased with that come out. I'm sure I had a couple more. I think they're in my display cabinet actually, yet to be painted. But yeah, that's the army so far. I'll say that there is more in my cabinet, but this is the recent part of my Rohan army. I'm not entirely sure if this is going to become a vlog as such. Probably not. This is more just an army that's going to be painted as and when. The next video will probably be my Morai Goblin command painted up, because I've not yet painted those up and I need to. And work on some more Moria goodness. I want to get another Warg Rider for the goblins, the Marauders, whatever you call them. But yeah, I think that's about it really. I think I've waffled on long enough. But let me know what you guys think. What were your recommendations for the Rohan Royal Guard? I know you can have up to 12 to 18 with Theoden now. Is it worth having that many? I'm assuming it is. But is it worth having that many? Or would it be better to have more numerous army with a few more standard warriors with a complementary smidgen of these guys mixed in? What do you think? And the same with the fighting helmingers, the strength 4. I'd imagine that is an epic help. Is it worth having them? Is it worth maxing out on them? I'm assuming it is. I won't have any bowmen within Grimbold's helmingers because they're the strength 4 guys. So there's no point having some strength 4s with a couple of bows mixed in. I'd probably have just a few bowmen mixed in with a standard generic sort of captain type model, something like that. We'll see. But yeah, let me know what you think. I'll keep you updated on the progress. Theodred is he's just undercoated. He's been undercoated for months, possibly over a year, to be quite honest. Poor bloke, he's just gathering dust in the display cabinet. But I will make some real effort to get him painted up, make him look awesome. But yeah, I'll leave it there. But thank you for watching, guys, as always. Much appreciated. Have an awesome time modelling, whatever you guys are doing. Let me know what you're up to in the comments as usual. I do really enjoy hearing your comments, and I appreciate each and every one of you following me and sticking with me for so long. Some of you guys have been with me since the beginning, I feel, which is awesome and always humbling, as I've always said. And yeah, take it easy, guys. See you soon. Bye bye.